There's, at the risk of going back to the things that I've already talked about, there's a thing that I wanted to mention that might not be immediately obvious if you have not really looked into game design principles and not really thought about what it would take to improve the situation in 5th edition. And I want to call this sabotage design. It's something that comes up when you have someone who either doesn't know what they're doing or in some cases does know what they're doing and wants something to be bad. Generally speaking, I would attribute this kind of design phenomenon to ignorance rather than malice. Sabotage design is when a class or a race or some sort of, whatever it is, your mechanical construct that is composed of several parts, has one or two parts that are significantly powerful relative to the rest. In the case of the 5th edition fighter, I would point to Action Surge. The monk has Stunning Fist. The barbarian has the damage resistance from rage. These are parts of the class that could be quite powerful. They are not, because they come packaged with everything else, and so in the full context of the game, they don't end up being a problem. But imagine Action Surge in the hands of a wizard. Imagine Stunning Fist imagine all marshals getting access to Stunning Fist. Imagine, it being very easy to acquire, or it's not even that it's very easy, but imagine having the physical damage resistance that the barbarian gets while also having good features. Like, these things seem to, I don't know what that is, these things seem to make up for a lack of other features, when in fact they do not. They emphatically do not. Action Surge, I think, comes the closest, because it recharges on a short rest, and it is actually quite versatile, though it is getting significantly less versatile in 1D&D, so you have that. They're nerfing what was and always will be meme builds by removing the ability to cast a spell using Action Surge. I understand their reasoning, but the execution is just very poor. Anyways, I call these sabotage design because what these features do is they prevent the class from being improved overall. Why would you give fighters maneuvers that can compete with spells if they have this thing that says that they get to basically act twice in a turn? The existence of Action Surge prevents the fighter from being able to have good things, because you always have to design fighter abilities with the assumption that they're going to be doing it twice in a turn. And so that Nova damage, or that Nova effectiveness, that first turn burst, like, you have to keep that under control. Otherwise, you run the risk. A fighter with a wizard's toolset and ability to use Action Surge would absolutely win fights on turn 1. Because it would be able to cast, a nuke spell and then a control spell, lock everything down, and you're going to be wiping out half the enemies in a standard encounter on your first turn. The monk can't have a lot of good stuff in addition to Stunning Strike or Stunning Fist or whatever the heck it's called, because Stunning Fist is seen or perceived to be quite powerful. It's not. It's fine. You have to keep that under control. You have to say, like, oh, they have Stunning Strikes, you can't give them any other good things, that's too good. It's not. It's emphatically not. But it's significantly better than their other stuff, for the most part. This is sabotage design. you can't improve on the overall package because of these individual standout features. What can be done about that? Well, first off, I want to say that this is related to the bias of the status quo, where you can't give all marshals the same at-will damage progression that casters have, where you increase your number of attacks or what have you. Basically, your damage scales by 100% of level 1 at levels 5, 11, and 17. All attack cantrips get that. The fighter gets it. No other marshal or no other weapon user gets that progression. And so it is seen as a special thing for the fighter. It's not a special thing for the fighter. It's a special thing for, Ranger, Paladin, Monk, Barbarian, and Rogue, that they don't get it. That's the minority. More than half the classes in the game get that at-will damage progression. Those 5 classes do not. So, the Rogue does get other damage progression, but it does not make up for it. So anyways, so people say you can't give the fighters extra attack progression to other marshals because then the fighter won't be special. That is the fighter's main thing. Well, that's a bad main thing to have, to be able to keep up with casters doing things that they do when they run out of resources. That's a really bad argument, but it does prevent it. It doesn't prevent. It makes people resistant to the idea of fixing balance problems because of an existing feature. Whereas I think if you look at the entire package, if you look at the mechanics and the class balance as a whole, you'll see that actually needs to be done. So, like my solutions for fixing at-will progression, which I have talked about in a previous video, I would say that the solution to sabotage design is to remove the sabotage. It's so easy. Remove action surge. Remove the resistance from rage. Excuse me. Remove what was the other one? Stunning strike. Remove Stunning Strike as its own separate feature and replace all of these things with actual good features. So in the case of the fighter, you need an expansive and comprehensive maneuver system. Maneuvers that can keep up with spells, that can compete with spells. And if you think, oh, you can't keep up with spells because the fighter also fights. Well, you fight with your maneuvers. The fighter should be approaching combat in kind of the same way that a spellcaster does, thinking, all right, I have my certain special abilities. If I don't want to spend resources on those, I can fall back on my basic attacks. Like a spellcaster, I have all of these different spells. If I don't want to spend any spell slots on these in the specific situation that I'm in, I can fall back on my cantrips. These are sort of general purpose attack abilities. Except that casters, of course, can get non-combat cantrips. Fighters don't get non-combat attacks. Just saying. In the case of the Barbarian, I would actually, and this is what I did for my Barbarian rework, I would actually just straight double the number of hit points they get. All melee-oriented characters kind of need more hit points than they have. But specifically for the Barbarian, I think doubling their hit points is a good thing. They kind of need it because of their specific and unusual relationship to taking damage. They are not only a melee character, they're a melee character with bad AC and who gives enemies advantage. They need the hit points. Double their hit points. Some people in their homebrew do like 2 dice or 2 hit dice for hit points. So basically like, doubling your hit points minus con. I think straight doubling hit points, like make it a first level feature. All hit points you gain from this class are doubled. I think that would be reasonable. Does that run into issues? That is not as good as resistance. Taking less damage is better than having more hit points because of the way it interacts with healing. So I would also make at some point the ability to self-heal. I mean, you can just look at my barbarian for an example of this. You have to have the ability to self-heal, and did I actually put in somewhere in there is the ability to increase health that you regain from other sources. So if a cleric heals you, you're getting more value out of that healing. I think that's a better solution than just resisting physical damage. For two reasons. One, it stacks with resistance, so you aren't now invalidating all the options you have for resisting damage. And also, what was the other reason? I had a second one. I swear I had two reasons in mind when I started that sentence. It doesn't invalidate existing resistance, and it's better for because having the defense only be against physical damage types means that you are vulnerable to other damage types, and that's a lot. Anything that isn't doing physical damage does full damage to you. You have no special defenses against it. And so I think generalizing your defenses is a good thing for the barbarian. It's something that they need, considering that they are explicitly putting themselves into danger. Stunning Strike, it kind of needs to be rebalanced, I think. The entire key system, it's not fundamentally flawed, but it is very poorly implemented. Monks never have enough key, and the things that they can use it on are not enough. They need a whole system of key abilities that they gain access to, a la maneuvers, a la rage powers, whatever it is that you want to do with those. If you want to invent a new resource system for a class, it needs to be more comprehensive than that. Casters have access to hundreds of spells, literally hundreds of options, many of which, I wouldn't talk about portions, so I'm not going to say most of which, but many of which, and there's enough, are like win an encounter in a fight. Absolutely bonkers abilities that casters get access to. Monks have their own separate resource system, but they get so few of it, and there's not really much to use it on other than Flurry of Blows, which is a minimal damage increase, and Stunning Strike, which is not super reliable, but when it goes off, it has a big effect. And that's why people think that it's strong, because when it works, it's a big deal. And so a monk can sort of pour all of their ki into doing that. And as a result, just by sheer number of times trying, they can kind of lock down one enemy in an encounter once or twice a day before they run out of ki. So these kinds of features are trap features. They're not trap features because they are decent. They're good. But they prevent the rest of the class from being improved by making people resistant to the kinds of features that classes need to be fun and interesting and strong. Because fun and interesting and strong does not combo well with these abilities that are designed with the assumption that the class is weak. You would never see Action Surge on a full caster because everyone would be able to see that's bullshit. That is way too strong. Being able to cast 2 full spells in a single turn, that's way too strong. It is on the fighter because we know that the fighter is not strong. And so we're like, sure, yeah, the fighter can take an extra turn once per short rest. Why wouldn't that be fine? The fighter's not really doing anything other than, some amount of damage. And damage is not how you... It's so weird to say. Damage isn't really how you win fights. Action economy is how you win fights. You don't need high damage. You need enough damage. Once you have enough, more is not really that useful. And so fighters being the best at single target DPR, it's not that big a deal because, the casters are going to be locking down the battlefield, preventing the enemy from taking actions. And so all you need is enough damage to take them down before that runs out. So those are my thoughts on this little design quirk that I noticed. Man, I noticed this a long, long time ago, actually, kind of at the dawn of 5th edition. I noticed that, there's features that are clearly strong amidst a sea of weak features. And you wouldn't see these kinds of things in a class if that class was good. Imagine a wizard with a subclass that gave them resistance to damage. Like, that would be crazy, right? Because we already know that wizards are extremely powerful and not fragile already. So it would be weird to give them that level of ability. Now, there are spells that can replicate the barbarian's resistance. Blade Ward gives you resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, slashing damage for an action. It's not really quite the same thing, is it? But, give them action surge as well. Then they can cast that and then also put down a control spell. And that would be, that's problem solved. Like, clearly, casters should not get these kinds of features without sacrificing levels for the dips that would be necessary. And they're not worth it because the casters are too strong to give up that much caster progression to get these things. Anyway, Sabotage design, I don't think it's intentional. I think it is just a matter of like they're coming up on a deadline and they realize we don't have enough good stuff for this class. Let's give them one really powerful ability and that will carry the class. And whether it does or it doesn't, one really powerful ability does not make a good class. It's not good design. It doesn't result in a good experience. You need to have lots of relatively even abilities to choose from in order to have the sort of satisfaction of being able to pick the right abilities, to utilize them well. If you just have the one ability that you're leaning on, it's unsatisfying because there's no real choice. And it's also unsatisfying because every character of your class is going to be operating basically the same way. So that there's a lot of problems with Sabotage design, but I think the most egregious one is that it makes the community resistant to change, resistant to the improvement of the class as a whole, because they see that one thing that's too powerful to be in a good class. And then if you take it out, like, you're taking away what makes the class special, or what makes it good, because you have to. So yeah, that's my frustration for today.